Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe let me just introduce it. We are starting. We are starting another presentation. We would like to show something that we have been working on in Ultra recently. It's like a small library of components for the mobile applications based on QGIS. So we have been doing it with my colleagues in the company, and I will pass the microphone to my colleague Victor, who will tell you more about it.
Hi. So I would like to introduce you a bit about the QGIS QT. As Martin said, we've been working on it for a while, and basically we think that there is always need for having some kind of library that you can use for making your own application, which can be basically used for on-site data gathering or some surveys or something like that. Probably know about the Q field, which is basically the application supposed to work for like the viewing the map, making some changes, and stuff like that. And we think it's a bit complex, and additionally, it's kind of like only internal project. I could maybe say in sense that to use. Everything all right? Cool. So in sense that if you would like to have a similar application, you should copy the code, and it's not really a good approach, of course. So therefore, we are working on a kind of library that with reusable components. So taking QGIS and its Q widgets. Here is a small comparison. Well, in this example, we took Q checkbox, which is based on Q object, and you can see all the hierarchy there. Basically, it's a XML file, and well, I guess most of you have been working already with those components. But on the right side, we got really similar Qt Quick component, checkbox XML. And well, it got, of course, different hierarchy because, well, it's Qt Quick library component. The difference is it's made for well, mobile applications or mobile devices applications. It resembles a bit of JavaScript or JSON. So if you want to define that component, it's a bit different than XML you got with the Q widgets. In addition, Qt Quick covers a lot of functionality and components you might be found interesting to have, or maybe might interesting to use for your application, which is good. And additionally, you can also extend all those components. So, as I said, here is a concept I took from the QGIS QT Quick documentation. There is a visual canvas. You got a simple coordinate, so basically you can put your components relative to the canvas. You can interact with all those components by user inputs, such as touching, pressing, keyboard input, or some other sensors. Well, for instance, also camera, or whatever sensor you connect, basically. Positioning, so that means you can pretty easily put components as you wish. So it supports layout or that relative layout I set relative to the canvas and some other things. So all those things are already supported. It's maybe not really important. You can read on or read about it at the documentation. Maybe what's quite interesting that it also supports particle and graphic effects. So basically, you can maybe make some animations. It's already there. So that could be nice. And what I found interesting that it's not closed library, so you can still make your own C++ component or service or well, some kind of a class which you can import in your QML code, and that's pretty good. And I think you will be using it a lot. We can take a look on that later. Here I got a really simple example of application. So as I said, this whole code is basically application itself. So we got the application window and the brackets, and you can see the syntax of QML. So this is a QML code. You can make objects like this, put properties. Some properties could have default value. You can also write functions. Also animations are supported, states, which are linked to the animations. And well, you can also build your element hierarchy. So if you got the application, you can have children elements, and you can put another level of children elements inside of them. So this is how the application can be built. And now that interesting part about the C++ extensions. So as I said, you can define your own class. And well, here we got a QGIS domination, whatever example. You have to put a Q object there. Also, there is a support for Q invocable and Q property. So for instance, we got a users. I got a M users as a private QReal property, and we got a setter and getter for that, and we can also put a notify function there. So if it has been changed or something, it will trigger the let's notify. And at the bottom of the code, you can see how it can be ported in the QML. So basically, if you got your elements and you can port this class in this way. But before that, you have to register that class in your project. So now we can take a look on something real. I got some demo applications, and I think I will zoom it out. I think it's hardly visible, right? So yeah, let me Control plus. Yeah, we do code, it works. Okay. So more. Okay. Fine. So here I got part of project we made for our customer. Basically, it was a mobile application for viewing and well modifying features on the map. So here I got a profile, which is like the project file where you have to define where is your QGIS installation folder, where the application can read all those QML files you made in a QGIS, or we try to make those elements and all those classes. So therefore, you have to define all those things here. As well, if you are using some other libraries, here we can see that we are using QGIS Core and our QGIS Quick plugin library. For instance, you might be using maybe some other things, so you can add it here in a pro file. Then you have to define sources and headers and all your QML components you made within that your application. So this file is it's quite important. In a config file, yeah, this profile has some build functions such as include. So basically, you can port some code into this, and you don't have to have like the really long one file. It's nice. So here I got also some variables defining a path to the library, and since we are talking about mobile application, it's necessary to handle build for Android. It's a bit different build than if you want to build it on a desktop. So we can take a look on this one. It's before you want to build your application, you have to build OSGeo for Android. It's available on Git, so you can Google it. There is short description how to build it. Then, if it has been successfully built, you should put a path here or somewhere else to the profile, for instance, because it's really necessary to have OSGeo for Android to really build it on your Android device. So after you build OSGeo for Android, you define all paths which are needed. You can finally create your elements, maybe by using QGIS Quick library, or maybe you can create your own within your application. Then, for instance, okay, so this is my main QML. So as you could see the really small sample before, here I got application middle again with some properties. This is my map element and so on and so on. And here, for instance, you can see that I'm using some variables, or maybe I might be using a specific class which I wrote or I used from the library, which is like C++ class here. And to do so, I had to register it at the main C++ class. So when I'm creating QGIS application, yeah, like all those things. Okay.
More about like the library.
Okay, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, this might be a bit boring. Yeah, I can imagine. So after all those building and compiling and all the things, finally we can take a look on our application, which is ready. So firstly, let me show you example.
The camera. You see?
Still building. Okay. So here we got map canvas.
maybe if you...
Yeah. Where is it? I maybe can turn off, yeah, stop sharing. Okay, and now it's...
I think or gallery.
Because there's like some kind of well, it's a bit hardly visible, but anyway, what you can see there, you got some toolbar with the buttons, and the main element is map canvas. So basically, what you can do, it's you can zoom in, zoom out. It's click on some feature. So this is the map canvas. It doesn't really have maybe interesting properties to really say, but you can take a look maybe on some other elements. So as I click on some point here, and now the form popped out. Here you got some fields which are basically defined in a QGIS project file. Here I got also a picture I took a few hours before. It's an external resource field. So, for instance, if I want to, I can edit it. So here I can choose a layer, which is loaded from the project. So for instance, I can take points. Here I can something, save it. Sorry?
No, sorry.
Here, for instance, what is not really good implemented yet, we want to make those components as flexible as possible. So, for instance, you can use this element, which is feature form, and you can make your own header, your own footer, put your icons or whatever. So this is the main idea of having that library, which is really flexible and reusable. For instance, I can show you also. It's a bug in the QT actually. So this is a photo panel.
Operating two cameras at the same time.
It's like exception. So yeah, you can take a picture. You can decline or confirm that you are satisfied with the picture. Now that point, yeah, it's all saved. Or you can discard all changes. For instance, if we go to the trails, it's a line layer. And here I took a walk around the pool. So here we got another feature. You can also use, so now if now the GPS module is on and it's basically taking a position of the tablet, so you can create your feature on a way. So if you got a GPS signal, you can create it based on your position.
You can start the recording, walk around, and it will record the trail.
Yeah, exactly. So
you can really see it very well.
Yeah. So for instance, if there is a point layer, you can click on it and a new point is created on on your position. Here you can take a walk around and create a polyline. Yeah. So some number maybe more. So this is the way how you can use GPS for creating a new feature. It's also included in the library. What else? Also, I would say the base element is scale bar, so it's also included in the library. And
this canvas is a wrapper to the QGIS canvas, or
yeah, exactly. So it's using QGIS canvas. But for instance, we've been talking with Martin that in the QGIS, the canvas is using a cache in a different way, because here in the application, for instance, if you go to background layer, and it's for instance some online service for maps, and you for instance zoom out, and it took a while to load all tiles instead of loading one by one and showing them almost immediately after loading it. So it's acting differently, but it's based on it's based on of course it's using QGIS core library. So this the difference. Yep.
Yeah, just for a little bit, I would also like to step back and do a bit of more of the introduction. Probably all of you know the application QField, which Matthias and Marco has mainly developed, and what's the relationship of that compared to what Victor has been showing. So the QField application is great for the kind of use where you have some project with layers where you want to survey, do the editing there, and take the changes somewhere back to the office, and that's perfect. What we were trying to solve is that from time to time we have some customers who want some custom application that maybe just 30% of the application is actually something to do with the map, or it's using some custom synchronization service for the features that have been recorded in the field, or simply that that you can't just take the QField application as it is for that kind of purpose. So we also talked with Matthias about all of this, and the general idea is to, just like we have the GUI library in QGIS for all the reusable components for desktop, this is meant to be like a equivalent library of reusable components for use in mobile devices, especially mainly mobile devices. It's called this QGIS Quick Library, and it's meant for now to have these basic components like the map canvas, the attribute form, the scale bar, and all these basic things that most of the applications need. The implementation inside, most of the code or the bulk of the code is actually taken from what Matthias has done before, just extracted into a way that it's more reusable within the QGIS source code. And so the idea is that for the future, like QGIS 3.2 or so. Since then, we have this nice library shared by everyone, and so that anyone who wants to build mobile applications for whatever purpose, they can do that. Maybe contribute more components, improve the existing components, just like what's being done in QGIS desktop. So that's like the grand plan, how we would like the things to go. My colleague Peter already maybe 2-3 months ago created this QGIS enhancement proposal, which kind of like describes the overall plan, which I have talked about now. And yeah, I think we are currently getting to the state where the library is kind of ready to be merged soon. So the next steps, we would like to create a pull request, get the rest of the community to see the changes, comment on that, and get it merged. And from then it can keep growing and growing. There is also a simple test application planned, like within the QGIS code, which is just simple for testing of the basic components. There is also like what Victor was showing with all the .project files and all the jazz about custom applications. It's also possible to, with some steps, build the whole thing for Android. So, maybe at some point it will be even possible to build it for iOS. That's somehow uncharted territory still. And yeah, it should be possible to make mobile applications with click of fingers for Windows tablets, for Android tablets, for anything you need. And eventually, maybe one day we would decide that we want to start using this Qt Quick library, not just for mobile, where it's like with touch enabled and everything, but also on the desktop, at least for some parts of it. Maybe start with things like the plugin manager to have nice view of like the plugin screenshots and whatever. And yeah.
Didn't Sourceful also did something with QT for the money for the army there?
Yeah, Almireo covered. That was a vertical application. Kind of.
That one is just like origin fork of. Yeah. What I know, what Sourceful did, and what Sandra was showing in Girona maybe or so. That's I think it's made to be running on Windows tablets, but it's still like completely based on the desktop QGIS application. It just got like a different different face, but inside it's still the old the desktop QGIS. So what is really nice with the Qt Quick components and everything is that it's much smoother. Like the user experience, you can very easily create any kind of animations and transitions and all these mobile things. And it should also probably like consume less energy and all that stuff. And it's a slightly different paradigm of programming, but it's also like fairly easy to pick up the basics. And especially if you already have these basic components like here is the map, here is the scale bar. I just set up a project, make some extra customizations, and the application is ready to go.
What about QT Quick with device services or the other application services? Sense of
What do you mean?
accelerator, other applications that offer contacts, for example.
Yeah. So by itself, the Qt Quick library is mainly about the visual items. On the other hand, lots of functionality from Qt library itself is available directly for QML. That there are, just like in QGIS, we have Python bindings. Also within Qt, there are these bindings to the QML engine, which is base for the Qt Quick libraries. And so that you can directly within this kind of JavaScript looking code use all that Qt functionality. Plus, if there is anything else you need, like a custom, then you can still go to C++, create some functionality there, and then expose it in QML without much effort. So it's very extensible.
Since you mentioned QField before, and you mentioned Matthias a lot, it is obviously.
I hope I have mentioned you as well.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah, you mentioned me as well, but it's not. That's not the point. No, as you said, Matthias was discussing with you a lot about this, and it's definitely the plan that QField will start, if possible, or wherever possible, use this so that we don't duplicate work at all, and make QField the best example of Qt Quick can do, basically. So we are not like for the people here that don't know the discussion in the back, we are not trying to have two different products. We are trying to make one building on top of the other one. So.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Any questions?
Just one. That will be support to Apple?
You mean for iOS?
Yes.
Yeah, that's, as I said a bit earlier, slightly unknown territory. There are probably some licensing problems. I think Matthias at some point was looking into it. Maybe Marco can tell more.
It was. Now it's good you mentioned me. It's well, beside the technical part of porting to iOS, there is a legal part, which is the bigger problem is deploying the application. So I don't know how much time it would take to make it run on iOS, just to make it run, but then you would have an issue in using the Apple Store, because the Apple Store has some limitation on how the app gets installed, which are not compatible with some of the licenses that we have. I was discussing with an open source lawyer, and basically there is no real way around it, because Apple just goes the easy way and says, well, we don't want to deal with this, we don't take it. The way around it is just not using the Apple Store. You would need to set up a repository, and you would need to have people join your association or your entity, because it's something that usually is used by large corporates or large companies which deploy their own app only in-house. So what the sort of workaround that I came up with, and that might be half legal or at least not too gray, would be to have in our case, we thought about the OpenGIS Association, that you need to get it. You need to fill a form where you say, I agree in becoming part of this association, and then you get the link to the repository, and that's kind of how you trick the system by deploying your app as being an organization, but basically still giving it to everybody. So it's more a legal thing than a technical thing. The technical thing, I don't know how much work it is. We haven't had enough interest yet from our clients, from users of QField, to actually go and dig into how much time it would mean. But theoretically, it means porting, I don't know, 12 libraries that we use in the background, and then Qt is supposed to run on iOS. So I don't know. But we didn't go through yet because we haven't had enough interest to take care of the legal part.
Yeah, and so yeah, recently we had one client like asking about this to like have some custom mapping application for their stuff, and yeah, they were considering to have like both Android and iOS support, because they have tablets of both types. But yeah, it looks like that's just the amount of time that one needs to spend to investigate the whole thing. Yeah, as Marco said, both legally and technically, to port all the libraries, figure out if there are any incompatibilities and some minefields like that. It's probably just much cheaper for them to buy a bunch of Android tablets, and it's solved. Yeah.
As stupid as it sounds, it's actually easier for a company to have their own in-house application because it's distributed through just on their own devices than to have an application made for everybody. So if we want to have QField distributed to just anybody that wants QField, we have more issues than if we want to just do an in-house app for just one client, which, sorry the language, but it pisses me off. But
Yeah. Any other questions? Comment? Okay, so thank you, everyone.